Also, and well, you forgot to mention the other star of this film. I believe that person was a young Jordan Wayne Long. So
Yes, that's right. He did get recast in the feature.
Thank God.
Hey everyone, this is David Stark from Watch or Pass. Today I'm joined by Matt Glass and Jordan Wayne Long, the co-directors of Ghosts of the Ozarks, which is coming to theaters, digital, and on demand on February 3rd, 2022. We're going to jump right into the interview. And while you're watching, if you can like and subscribe to this channel, that would be fantastic. It helps me out a lot. Thank you.
Good. How are you, David?
Doing well. So thanks so much for joining me. This is Matt Glass and Jordan Wayne Long, the co-directors of Ghosts of the Ozarks, which is coming to theaters, digital, and on demand on February 3rd, 2022. Now let's talk Ghosts of the Ozarks.
Let's do it.
Yeah,
Ooh, nice. I like it. The red fawn.
I know. Ron, be careful. Just keep an eye out for me, okay? Just make sure.
You got it. On me. If you hear any whistling, you'll know you're in trouble.
Well, if I'm home alone, so if I hear some whistling, I'll definitely be in trouble. So I saw that you both wrote and worked on a short film, Ghosts of the Ozarks, 2016. I imagine that this was related to that because it had the same actors and you both were on it. But I guess what was the catalyst for that film? And then I assume that story was then the catalyst for this eventual movie.
Jordan, you can go first.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the initial idea came from a bunch of vigilantes in the Ozark Mountains that were around in the 1800s called the Bald Knobbers. I lived in a town in the Ozark Mountains called Bald Knob. So as a kid, I was terrified by these vigilantes that were no longer around. So the idea really started from that. And Matt and I wrote the short film in 2016 with Tommy Hobson and Tara Perry. And then once we shot that in 3 days in Arkansas. And we pretty much knew right away, like, okay, we can make this into a feature. So I started working on that script and Matt started working on his. And that's when I brought in Tara Perry and started writing the feature.
Also, and well, you forgot to mention the other star of this film. I believe that person was a young Jordan Wayne Long. So
yes, that's right. He did get recast in the feature.
Thank God.
I was going to ask, like, why did you should have just written like a little part for yourself just as a callback, or I don't know.
He does make a sort of a cameo, and like there are certain parts of the movie that are like silhouetted, and he's in that.
Yeah,
and he's the creature.
I'm the creature most of the time. Yeah, it was an annoying suit. So
I'm trying to think of how to not to spoil it.
My buddy in First AC, he also adorned the suit when we needed it. But
yeah, so you helped with the ghosts is I guess how you could say it. But you didn't have a line. You couldn't, or just do like growls. Did that count as a line for SAG credit?
ADR. You'll hear Matt Glass.
I have a lot of ADR. Yeah, we did a loop of stuff, and I'm a lot of people in the crowd saying nonsense.
So that was kind of the initial film. How long was that? And then I assume you had to then flesh it out and kind of build out this idea for this film. So I guess how was that process? Was it pretty easy once you kind of had that initial short film, or what was it kind of almost like, oh my gosh, now we have this great concept and now we have to fill it out into a feature like the amount of time?
You think?
It's really funny because I think once we did the short film, it was sort of like, wow, Tommy and Tara are great. Let's take them and then just scrap everything else. So Jordan just kind of redid, like, there's almost nothing except for first names that are the same about the script. Yeah, it's very, very different. It's really interesting to watch because it feels like almost like maybe 100 years after the feature film Ghosts of the Ozarks came out, somebody heard the story and made like their own short film version of it. Like it's like a weird mutation of the ideas. It's really interesting.
Yeah, it really was just a proof of concept for us. When you're like, okay, can we shoot action? Can we do this? Can we do that? And it was a good testing ground for, what works and what doesn't, and what are we capable of, and what do we need to work on? And that really, it really was like, we just kind of beat it to crap after that and came out with the feature. But we had the feature in about 4 months, the first draft of it. Wow. After the short film. And then Matt came in and we do a lot of like table reads and we rewrites. And so he was right there along the way the whole time.
I love this idea that you just put forth, that like the short film is almost like fan fiction for the main feature film. I love that thought. When we all go away after this next pandemic and they find all these pieces of our last culture, I'm wondering how they'll connect those two. We'll see what they say. And I also noticed that you both, I mean, I think this is not uncommon in indie filmmaking, but you both wore a lot of hats in this movie. I mean, Jordan, you were a director and co-writer, and Matt, you were a composer, and the music was phenomenal on this film. So I guess is that something you just are you like naturally a musician, you just wanted to try it, or was it like we can't afford music, like I guess I can learn how to play the guitar and the cello and the banjo and figure this all out?
That might be how it started when we first started the production company. It was like, well, I was in a lot of rock bands, and when we started making short documentaries, I would just put the rock band music in. Then I'd be like, well, let me just write something for this one. And then it became, well, now I have to write stuff for all of them. And then it became like a thing. And eventually it was such a gradual evolution to doing like 7-minute shorts, and then suddenly doing an hour-long documentary, and then doing features. And so it just kind of naturally happened to the point now where I'm like, I think I have to do all of them. I like, it's so much fun.
I prefer that. From the beginning, I never had any doubt. I was always wanting Matt's music. When we met in grad school for photography, and he was always putting his music to like all this like fast imagery, and it was just gorgeous. And so I always was hoping that that's what would happen. And it's really fun to watch because they'll be coming out when the movie comes out. There'll be some BTS that comes along with it, and one of them's about the music. And he took Tara Perry's voice and recontextualized it into like chords, and that's what you hear a lot in the woods. And talk to him. I mean, he writes to the word, David. And anytime you get to, if you're indie filmmakers and you get to make a movie, you're like, let's put everything into this to tell the story the best way. And it is phenomenal to have someone come on at the end and layer in that music and really help punch up those notes that you needed, but you weren't able to cut in the edit. And it's just awesome.
Yeah, no, I love that music. Like it was so interesting because it kind of like evoked a, I don't know, like southern feel, like a southern country feel, but it had a little bit more depth than I think I was expecting. And the cello, I assume there was a cello in there because I think I remember that. That was like set the tone perfectly for those scenes. There were a lot of times I'd be like, that is really great music, and like that's not something you notice in most indie films. So,
I mean, I think, not that we have to talk about music the whole time, but I think something about coming from like a rock and pop music background is that music, I mean, there's a lot of movies where music is just there because you're supposed to put music there, but I think it's nice when the music is another character. It's something that used to be popular in the like 80s with John Williams and people like that. And then now it's becoming popular again, but like in this new contemporary style where people aren't using just orchestra, it becomes this whole other thing. But it's a noticeable thing, and it's a character, and it's another reason why people go to see movies. I think there's like a rebirth of like really great composers out there. I'm not saying that I'm a really great composer.
I think you are.
I'll second that. And I do think it's one of those things that maybe you like, I think you maybe not notice it if it's just kind of like there, but when it's really good, it like really can add some depth to the film, and also kind of elevate a movie that, it makes it feel like a nicer, more high quality film because it's just there and kind of layered on.
Thanks. Yeah. And then there's a musical number in the movie that Jordan wrote the lyrics for.
Oh, nice.
So we collaborated on that.
Yeah, that's always fun. I love when he's like, hey, can you help me out with this? I'm like, yeah, well, hang on.
Well, I just have it in my songbook right here. Perfect.
Exactly. Yeah, I've got some notes.
Right. So the cast, I also love the cast and the characters. You mentioned that you worked with Tommy and Tara before. How did you get the other characters? How did you get David Arquette involved? Because I loved his character. His character was just a lot of fun. Like he was just the nicest person, and it was so fashionable and fun at the very start of the film.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, we worked with David a bunch from when we did our documentaries early on, our short documentaries. We did one on a puppeteer that worked in a club of his, and we met him through that. And so we started doing little side projects together, and then so we worked with a lot with him since like 2013, I guess.
Yeah, we had made an indie film called Squirrel, and then when we were making our next one, David and Christina, which is David's wife, they wanted to kind of get in on producing, and so HCT, we were doing it, and we're like, let's go. So that was really cool to have them aboard on 12-hour shift, and then we brought them aboard once we got everything settled for Ghost. So yeah, it was really great. And of course, along with that, that brought us like Tim Blake Nelson, and that was just like fantastic. And it was really cool to have like Tommy and Tara and Angela Bettis and Phil Morris and Tim and David, because they're all just phenomenal. And Joseph Rude, who is, came from the WWE, and this was one of his first acting roles, and he knocked it out of the park. And I'm just so excited to see where he goes from here. It's very fun.
You kind of have to say he knocked it out of the park because he could also knock all of us out of the park. So
All of us.
but he seems like a very nice person. And yeah, the cast was just so much fun. I was like, I had to look it up after. I was like, that is Buster Scruggs right there, except he's a very different Buster character than Buster Scruggs. But I kind of love that. I love seeing the different types of characters he played.
Yeah, he's got a lot of range. It's great.
He does, and he really came in and committed. We built the bar for Torb's character, and so he came in early to get a feel for it, because when he had his prosthetics and his milky contact in, he couldn't see. So he really was utilizing, you know, what he had learned and what he had learned from the butcher. And it shows up on screen. Like you said, that cello part, like when the cello's in there, I'm just all in. It's fun.
That is amazing, because there are some scenes where he has, I assume, real knives, and he apparently can't see that. I guess living on the edge, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And this film kind of had a balance between, like, I guess, practical effects, kind of the prosthetics, and the gore. I thought was really well done, and then also some CG for some of the, I guess, environmental effects. How did you kind of arrive at that? Was this something that, did you try all practical and then we're just like, no, we kind of need something more, or did you kind of always have this divide in how you were going to approach this story, and especially the effects around it?
Me? I think the idea was to do as much practical as possible. And then I think when we get there on the day sometimes, and like certain things aren't working out, it just becomes like, then it's like, okay, that'll have to be a CG one just to save time now, because we know we can do it. And then, for example, the big one that we always talk about is the wide shots of the town. Those are miniatures that Jordan built, and then I augmented them with CG. So I think it's mostly CG. I don't even know if it's considered CG, because it's not computer generated. It's just like computer augmented. Yeah. But it was mostly my visual effects were usually just brought in to like tweak or like put a little shine on the practical effects. Like even like the gore effects are sometimes augmented by digital stuff just to make it a little more gory. And
I'd say the fog was 90% practical and 10%, you know, you recreating it.
Because the fog was pink, so that was a big.
And he color corrects it too, so he really is in charge of the look in the post, and I kind of like deal with the front end of production, and that's just kind of from necessity, being indie filmmakers, and now it's kind of something we get to do, which is fun.
In my head, you got the fog from like a gender reveal party that happened, and then just kind of use that because you had to, right? Like that's how indie filmmaking is.
Yeah. Yep. You got it.
They were
we all had a girl. Everyone had a girl.
Yeah, they're for like paintball. They're really intense, but man, we had to use a lot of them, but it was great.
Awesome. So I know we have very limited time, so I'd like to switch. I call it the lightning round. They're just very lightweight questions about the film. I want to see how your experiences map to things on the film. You can feel free not to answer any of them. I will not be offended, but I try to keep them very answerable. First question is, have you ever stayed anywhere haunted?
Yeah. Yes, I've stayed in Eureka Springs, and it's the Crescent Hotel, and I've stayed in the second most haunted room available.
That's
it was
awesome.
terrifying.
Why the second? Why the second most haunted? Was the first one?
First one was booked. Booked solid for years.
When was the last time y'all completely like packed up and relocated to a new place?
2013. We both moved to Los Angeles 9 years ago, almost today, maybe a couple days.
Yeah, a couple days. Yeah. 9 years.
I came from Utah. You came from
Boston at the time. I'm originally from Arkansas.
Los Angeles, possibly the only place scarier than the town in this film. So good on that.
A lot of red smoke around here.
One of the characters kept talking about hats, and I noticed in your IMDb bios you both had hats, and in this interview you both had hats. So I assume you are hat people, because that was a big theme during the film.
We are out of necessity. This thing burns. You got to be careful with it.
It's true.
No, but
hats make hair happen.
Hats make it the man, or is it clothes? I can't remember what the
hat is part of it. It's the extension of the man. And I am going there. I try to keep nice camera angles for my hair, but I will be with you.
You're sexy. Totally. Don't let anyone tell you different. You're sexy.
It's recorded. It's fact now. And last question is, one of the medicines that Doc had was a bottle of cocaine. I was wondering, like, how much research did you all do in preparation for this film, especially, his medicines? Was there any practical research involved? You don't have to answer this if you don't want to.
No, not like we didn't try it.
No, but we researched the crap out of it. My mom gave me 3 books on the hats between 1810 and 1870, and of course I went through those. But then our costume designer Brianna Quick, she just loves that. And she is incredible, and the work she did with the costumes. I mean, they were hand making that stuff.
Wow.
It was incredible.
Yeah, I'm not sure about production design who actually did the labels for that stuff.
That should be Mark Jones, I bet.
And that's probably pretty.
You know, you don't seem like narcs. We don't have to narc them out in the.
No, we love that. That's the fun, right? When you're getting to make art, like how ingrained can you make it, and how fun can you make it for people to watch again? So love that question.
Definitely. I know I have to wrap, but I also, you mentioned art. I loved the paintings in this film, like the ghost paintings. I like saw that. I was like, dang, those look awesome. Like I kind of want to know where I can get them, but I assume they're unique to the film.
Thank you. We'll we can arrange that. That was a collaboration between us and artist Mark Jones, and then we had the factory in New York City print out just billboard links of them, and that's kind of how we put them up, almost like wallpaper. So it was a pretty fun thing to figure out. I'm glad you liked it.
That's awesome. Well, and I have to wrap. I know you have a busy day, so thanks so much for your time. This is Matt Glass and Jordan Wayne Long, the co-directors of Ghosts of the Ozarks, which is coming to theaters, digital, and on demand on February 3rd, 2022. Thank you so much.
You're so good, David. Thank you so much,
Appreciate
man.
it.
Awesome. Thank you. That was Matt Glass and Jordan Wayne Long, the co-directors of Ghosts of the Ozarks, which is coming to the theaters, on demand, and digital on February 3rd, 2022. It is an interesting indie film that has some great characters, some fantastic music, and a mysterious setting. If you like this interview, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a lot. Make sure all my new content goes straight to you. And please check out my other content. I've got other movie reviews, interviews, unboxing videos, and recommendations. Thank you.